Number three, it's very important that it comes third after we've regulated, after we've done the pattern interrupt, after we've identified it and taken its power from our body. Now, okay, parents, welcome. In today's video, we have a triggered parent. I don't know actually if it's a mother or father, is a parent of a 12-year-old, and they want to understand how to handle their triggers. And this is a specialty about what I teach. And I'm going to share 3 specific steps, and I'll post something below in the top comment, in the pinned comment, that will take you to a lesson I gave that teaches how to handle these in more in depth. No opt-in, you don't have to buy anything. It's completely free down below. But here we go. For those who have been able to figure out how to stay calm when triggered by things, please tell me what has helped you stay gentle. I'm very triggered by my 12-year-old. Makes sense. My 12-year-old's defiance and struggling not to react in ways I don't want to. Okay, what's worked for you? First, I want to acknowledge this parent, and I want you, if you're watching this, if you're seeking out help, if you are asking questions in a healthy way, then celebrate yourself, congratulate yourself on this, because you're taking a step that many parents won't take, either because they don't know to ask, they're too stubborn, they want to figure it out on their own. But the idea of this question is so beautiful because you're asking what has worked for you to manage these triggers, right? It's not a question of how do I get them to listen? No, you're asking a question, how to stay calm when I'm triggered. So I want you to first, before addressing the triggering, before addressing the behavior of the 12-year-old, before anything, I always say step one is celebrate yourself. Celebrate your win. This is a win. We need to celebrate our wins more often. And it could be little wins like this or giant wins that led us to, once you've handled a trigger, that's a win. Celebrate your wins when they come. So that way we are inviting more wins and we get in this win cycle, whereas we celebrate a win and that leads us to make other winning decisions, which lead to us celebrating the win and having that win feeling and making more positive decisions. And the win feeling leads to more positive decisions. That's what I call the win cycle, as opposed to the guilt cycle, which I've talked about many times. Anyway, so let's get into this. Let's get into some specific advice now, some 3 steps, a few steps to help you when you're triggered, right? For one, let's get to the age of the child, 12-year-olds. In full disclosure, my kids are not 12. My oldest one is 8, but I've spent 17 years as a classroom teacher. Many of those years was teaching teenagers. So I've taught classes of, 3 people all the way up to 30 people in a classroom, teenagers, right? So, and as a teacher, teenagers, pre-teens, this 12, 13, 14, 15 age range, it's the most challenging for many teachers, but it was also my favorite age because it was challenging. And I communicated with them in a way that I was kind of like a teenage whisperer. So it comes down to empathy. It comes down to understanding that as a teenager, I remember when I was 12 and 13, you couldn't pay me enough money to go back and experience the world at those ages again. That much money does not exist. So that's the first thing. Empathize that this is a difficult age for the 12-year-old. So what we define as defiance, yes, it might be defiance. But if we use words like that in our own minds, then that's where the triggering happens, because we are putting a label on their behavior, that label of defiance. And then when someone is defiant against me, that triggers rage and anger or pride, or I have to gain control, or some triggering emotion that causes resistance. Does that make sense? So let's see if we can change our perspective a little bit, right? Just shift our perspective. I'm not saying that he's not being defiant. I'm not saying that he's not being a little prick. I'm not saying that because we are at that age, and I am now, and I'm 44. I can have my prick moments, right? But let's, for our own health and for the sake of this question, the question is how to remain calm when I'm triggered. So let's shift our perspective on what this is. Okay. So what to do when you're triggered. Notice that, yes, their defiant behavior, their behavior is their behavior. A 12-year-old is gonna be a 12-year-old. I mean, there are hormones, there is insecurity, maybe they're struggling to find friends, or they're struggling to fit in, and they just need to find their way in the world, right? And then that in turn is causing you as a parent to be triggered, to be frustrated, to struggle, to be lost as a parent. And then that creates a cycle. So let's break that cycle. Number one is whenever I get triggered by something, and this is within myself, whether I have raccoons coming in my mind, and these raccoons, I call them raccoons, these negative thoughts of you're not good enough, or these negative thoughts of don't mess up, or these negative thoughts reminding me of all the mistakes I've made, and these negative thoughts reminding me about all the times I've messed up. I call these raccoons. And the thing about raccoons is if you just let them dig around in your trash, they're going to come in more, stronger, and bigger, and make more of a mess in our minds. But we need to go out on the porch, face the fear, and confront them, shine a flashlight on them, turn on the light, lean into these feelings, lean into these thoughts, and take the power away. So number one is I pattern interrupt. Pattern interrupt is this awesome thing, is essentially doing something to break the flow of the energy. So some examples of pattern interrupts could be just what I did, right? A moment of silence. You're having a heated discussion and heated debate, a moment of silence with the intention to regulate the energy flow, right? So when you're in a discussion, or when you're triggered and you're wiping down the table, and you might wipe a hole right through the floor, whatever. Separate a little bit from the emotional reaction with a pattern interrupt. Or it could just be asking a question. Where did that come from? Where did that thought come from? Right? I stopped in my tracks when this happened. I was in a moment the other night. Here's a full transparency. I was in a moment the other night and celebrating a giant win I had about how I'm helping people. And I had some awesome calls and awesome conversations with parents. And I was just feeling on top, like really celebrating my wins. And then all of a sudden, out of my mouth, I was celebrating mid-celebration, and I say, I don't just hear, I say, no, don't up. What? Right? And it's the same thing when our children are having are triggering something in their behavior is their behavior, but our trigger is our trigger. Their behavior is their behavior. Our trigger is our trigger. And they don't necessarily coincide. They may, but they may not necessarily coincide. Because we could be triggered by someone on the internet. We could be triggered by a sign that we see. We could be triggered by how we see another parent responding to their child or interacting with their child. We could be triggered by anything, but that's our trigger, right? So a little pattern interrupt. And then step two is get into my body. I get into my body. So what can this look like? A lot of the times it will be in these triggering moments and feel in my body where I feel the burning sensation or the heavy sensation or the knot sensation or the knot like KNOT, or where in my body am I feeling this trigger? For me, a lot of the times it's in my belly. Sometimes it's in my neck. Sometimes it's right here. But where in my body am I feeling this? It could also look like what I did the other night is just breathing into wherever the trigger is, breathing into my belly, focusing on my breath, bringing healthy oxygen in, releasing it out, and calming the nervous system. So number one, pattern interrupt. Number two, get in the body. This order is very important because so many people, they want to go straight to number three. And number three is what to do, handling it intellectually. So they might jump right, skip a pattern interrupt, be right in the midst of stress and tension, and then ask, well, what do you want to do? Or why did you do that? Why are you like this? Like you're seeking, we think it's like seeking an answer, but it's not, because we're in that emotional state. We haven't gone through those first two steps. Number three, it's very important that it comes third after we've regulated, after we've done the pattern interrupt, after we've identified it and taken its power from our body. Now get into what are some intellectual things that we can do? How can we address this behavior, his behavior now? Right? So we don't want to react. We want to respond. And that's how to respond. It's bring down the emotional tension, the negative energy, the tension, the pressure, and then address the behavior. Because you want to let him know, as we talked about before, a 12-year-old, I did anyway, I thought the world was against me. I didn't have many friends. I didn't feel like I fit in. I felt invisible. I wasn't good at school. I was okay at school, but I didn't put any effort because I didn't see how it fit in my life. Like it was just like I had to do this study for tests and do homework, and then your teachers are ragging on you. You feel lost. You're not paying attention in school because you're thinking about like a girl or a boy you like, and you're just waiting for the seconds to finish until you hear the bell, and then you're lost in the hallway. Right? A lot of the time, I think that's the case. And then if we just as parents can, and teachers, if any teachers are watching, if we can remember that a little bit and identify with that and empathize with that and understand that, listen, like this is difficult for you. Like, let's be transparent. When I was 12, and then share what I shared with you. You see how when I shared that with you, it may have created a little connection here because I was transparent. I'm transparent with my kids. That's one thing in these sentence patterns that I teach. One of the things is, that same thing happened to me when I was little. Like when they fall off a bike or when they have an argument with their friends or whatever, yeah, I remember that. That sucks. I remember one time and then I go into a story. So all that to say, you're doing an amazing job. Thank you for writing this in. Anyone listening, if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to click the subscribe button and click the bell so that you can be notified each week when I share a parenting situation help video. And if I can share some empathy with this parent, you're doing a great job. Just based on how you're asking this question, what's worked for you, you're looking for ways to handle the triggers. Just by the way you're handling this question, you're doing a great job. Like I started out with the video, celebrate yourself. Anyone who is looking for this sort of thing, again, in the description and in the top comment, I share some information. I want to get it out there. I want to get it in your hands. and I'm here to help. That's why I do these videos. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you. You are doing an amazing job as a parent. Keep it up, and I will see you in the next one.